Thank you. Good morning. So thank you for tuning in, for those who did. My name is Davina Sadyakeerthy, and I'm going to be talking about supporting trainees in a small centre and the importance of networking. So I am a highly specialised cardiac physiologist and also an ETP training officer, and I'm currently working at George Eliot NHS Trust. I myself have also completed the PTP, ETP, and MSc, so hopefully I can give you the best advice that I can. So a little bit about us, so that you have an idea about sort of my environment and why this subject is applicable. We are a smaller local hospital compared to the other bigger regional teaching hospitals. So our duty primarily lies in treating acute illnesses, short-term care. So we primarily diagnose and stabilise patients before they go to the bigger centres. And my team is mainly the echo lead. We've got 4 band 7s and 2 band 6s, one of which is currently undertaking the ETP course. And we're split between the main cardiorespiratory unit and the diagnostic centre. So let's get stuck in. So small centre issues. So as a small centre, it's important to address some of these issues. I think firstly, retaining and recruiting staff. Sometimes there's little motive for people to remain in these centres, especially if you are, like me, located in a remote area. There is a struggle to kind of get settled in, compared to hospitals near the cities. But on the flip side of that, those who are settled with families tend to remain. Those in long-term senior positions, they obviously limit those who are in junior positions to progress because the band or the job might not be required for that hospital. Also, retirement and people leaving are also a problem, especially if you're trying to cover the clinical duties and also the training duties. Staff resources are stretched at times, so you might not receive timely feedback or complete training activities on time. And as a general hospital, there is a quick turnover of a patient, so you are limited to exposure to rare pathologies. But enough of the negatives, I think let's talk some of the positives. So in a small centre, you do get allocated sufficient time to obtain hands-on practice, get any of your portfolio work done, and also work on the BSc. ETP trainees are supernumerary, so but hands-on practice is where you obtain the most amount of knowledge. And as a small centre, you do get exposed to clinical work more. You do get opportunity for direct contact with senior staff, and with larger centres, because they're more in demand, you might not get paired with them necessarily, so you might be with someone less experienced. Peer-to-peer learning, there's always opportunities for trainees to present and attend teaching sessions, and obviously you learn best from each other, so you are able to meet more often and discuss things more often, whereas I find with larger hospitals, they're rotated in to cover various sites, so you might be limited to when and how long you might be able to speak to people. So some solutions to these issues. First and foremost, organisation. So arranging the frequent one-to-one meetings. As a trainer and trainee, you both have a duty to communicate and collaborate. And it's really important to keep on top of signing things off. Training for senior staff, an example is the trainer course. It's really important to know why and what you're assessing on, and if you do have any questions, get in contact with the school. Networking, another big thing. It's really important to build a rapport with other hospitals, as you might need to send your trainees off to these sites if you are struggling to fill any gaps in and looking for specific pathologies for their logbook. So it's important to have a good relationship. So for our trust, our nearest sites are in Birmingham and Leicester. So let's dive into these solutions more. So organisation, the purpose of organisation is to basically split down what must be done into achievable goals. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, is to understand the demands and the time frame to get things done. Also understand the number of competencies, so including your DOPS, CBDs, and also everything that needs to be done for the BSc exam. Maybe consider sharing the responsibility of internal training. So collaborate amongst your seniors to ensure that training standards are being met. Also, if they don't have a cardiac background, we need to factor in the possibility of observing ECGs and cath labs. So you need to make sure to share that responsibility as a cardiology unit, not just as an echo team. And it's also important to include any external training. So whatever the trainer or trainee would like to do, just make sure it best fits the rota. And finally, collaborating on the rota. So essentially, you need to discuss as an echo lead, trainer and trainee, what is the best days to take your study days off. And that way you're better to utilise the days that you are in. Another way to organise is to use a timeline. So you can find this template online. Use it, and the hardest part is to stick to it. So as a trainer, check in with your trainee to ensure all the objectives are being met by the end of each month. Obviously, you can readjust these, and if any additional help is required, then you can come up with a plan for that. Another thing that I actually came across that I found quite useful is the RACI model. I think this is a fun activity that as a trainer and a trainee you can do together and kind of compare. And this will just make sure you both have an understanding of the responsibility one another have. So on the side you can see there are tasks that need to be met, and who at the top you can see who's responsible for that. And there's different degrees of responsibility, as you can see on the right hand side. There's responsible, accountable, consulted and informed. So you can go through that and kind of grade each one and then compare and see where that responsibility lies. And this will give you more of a clear view on the actions that need to be met. So extra exposure. So as a small centre, you do have spare time occasionally. So other exposures to other areas of the department might be to look at manual blood pressures, so exercise echo and CPETs, looking at ECGs, Holter analysis, especially if they need to work on analysing rhythms, cath labs, and of course observing TOEs, stress echoes, contrast and bubble studies. So managing problems as a small centre, I like to kind of break it down into 5 steps. First of all, describe and outline the situation. What is the problem that you're trying to overcome? Analyse it, so reflect on your actions and what your thoughts were. evaluate, so assess the impact on what that has on patients and colleagues and the team as a whole. Fourth is to formulate, so set a clear, actionable goal, and I think that's really important. Just make sure that's achievable for the time frame. And then lastly, reflect at regular intervals. So go back to the problem and see how you've overcome it, and especially after a challenging encounter, and that can be following your training as well. So networking, why should we do it? Well, I think there's a lot of answers for this, but the main 5 that I came up with is staying up to date with new research and best practices in your field, getting assistance and support from other healthcare professionals. So making sure you have a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not just one-sided, you're both working together. Influencing the healthcare system and creating alliances with other organisations. So this just doesn't necessarily mean within the NHS, it can be with companies and things like that. Shared problem solving, so the exchange of ideas and expertise can result in more creative and effective solutions. And obviously access to future employment opportunities. So how can you network? Well, the best ways are to share good practice, so attending BSc conferences, publishing research or audits. You could also join newsletters and create WhatsApp groups. Also Twitter and LinkedIn are also great apps. So it's really important to build a base of networking. That can be old or new colleagues, if you've got old classmates that you're still in touch with, faculty members. And then the next step is to develop that network. So find a mentor that you'd like to keep in touch with. And that can be found through attending professional events. And then I think this is probably the most important step, is to maintain that relationship and make sure that you have the responsibility to follow that up. There is no timeline to get things done, so take your time with it, but it is a work in progress, and I think that's important. So identify common values. Is there any shared research or projects or interests? And like I said, communication, so follow up the networking with an action. Share any updates and achievements, so go back to that person. And for example, I actually met someone on a clinical assessment course prior to starting up some physiologist-led bowel clinics at my trust, and she was actually setting up something similar. And through our networking connection, we actually started to share our pathways and SOPs, and essentially we were able to collaborate and help each other with that. So it's important to update each other and any achievements that you've done, because that might come into use for you as well. Offer your support and be approachable. You have to reach out sometimes and not expect to be approached. This is really tricky, especially if you are a bit more reserved or an introvert. However, once you start to do it, I think you will feel more confident in that. Expand your network. You don't, like I said, you don't have to remain within hospitals. Are there any other companies, healthcare companies? It is a skill, and you do learn and improve over time. So do be patient with yourself, and always remember that it is an investment. It takes time to build relationships. So don't give up easily. And as a final reminder, I just thought I could share these quotes. Alan Collins said, pulling good effort, network together takes effort, sincerity and time. And Bill Nye said, everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't. So be authentic and be yourself. Thank you for listening, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.